Today's episode of the Sustainability Scope is brought to you by AM Custom Clothing, a wholesale provider of sustainable printed and embroidered clothing for businesses, bands and brands. Welcome to the Sustainability Scope, the show that gives you bite-sized facts and chats about all things sustainability. I'm Mike.
And I'm Alex.
And today we're going to be talking about the sportswear sustainability problem. So, the sportswear sustainability problem is an interesting one, I think, because I think we probably need to put it into a little bit of context first, don't we? So, out of the two of us, you're much more of a gym rat than I am. So you've probably seen over the years quite a big change, I think, probably in the way that people dress going to the gym. Because back in the day, you'd go to the gym wearing just whatever. You were going to get sweaty. You were not going to be looking your best. You'd put on just any old baggy t-shirt, a pair of shorts, some stinky trainers or whatever, and that'd be it. But today it's a parade of regalia, perhaps, as we should describe it. Like it's almost like you go into fashion week or something like that when you go to the gym, because it's seen very much more as a social thing as well as just a place to get fit, and that's been brought on by this rise in kind of fashionable sportswear.
Yeah, I think it's one of them. I think it's been a good thing because the gym's become cool. Whereas before, I think it was like people were just going to be healthy.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's become like somewhat of a cool thing to go to. And I think, you're right. Like the clothing previously, I think when I was much younger, it'd be like you just wear a t-shirt and an old pair of shorts or whatever.
Yeah.
Rock up at the gym, good to go. And like athleisure wasn't really a thing. Like it was, maybe there was the big brands like Nike and stuff that were doing sportswear, but most people who had no idea what they were doing weren't wearing that. That was probably the die-hard fitness fanatics that were like wearing it for that increased performance to get that extra bit, whereas most people weren't bothered. Whereas now it's like everyone's buying like seamless leggings because the seams are just so inconvenient, it's things like that where they're wearing all the gear as if they're an athlete but not necessarily. And I think that's again good because it makes people feel more confident in the gym, makes them possibly more inclined to go.
I think as well, I mean, there's obviously the benefits there of if it's more attractive to go to the gym, it makes people more comfortable to go. It's more social. Yeah, it's a bit of a social activity, but at the same time, the side effect of that social element is the fact that they're going to be doing more exercise. But it's more than just the gym as well, isn't it? Because if you go walk down the street, I mean, we were talking just before we started recording this, and you were watching the school run this morning by your house, and all of the mums were all wearing their sportswear, their Gymshark and stuff like that. So it's become quite fashionable as well, just to wear it outside. It's not like you would never, whilst it was the sort of the thing to do to just wear some old baggy clothes to go to the gym, you'd have never have seen people who would just be wearing that same stuff to go to Asda, for example, or just out for a stroll. You would wear it exclusively to go to the gym, wouldn't you? Whereas now it's very much a fashion as well as a function. And I mean, some of the statistics really kind of put that into perspective. Statista said that the global activewear market in 2022, so last year, was worth about $319 billion. That was 5% up on the year before. And that same piece of research forecasted it would grow by almost 50% between 2021 and 2028 to $451 billion. Which is huge, but it's more than that. If you drill into it a little bit more, athleisure, which is a bit of a strange word, which is kind of like athletic leisure wear, I guess.
That's your mum's doing the school run.
It's
stuff,
basically wearing fitness stuff to go for a walk or to go to the shop or whatever. And I get it because it's comfortable. But that market's grown by 8% per year rather than 5%. It's very, very big money, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of leads into the next point, that being that this athleisure gear is made from a material typically called polyester, and the polyester category is the fastest growing fashion, one of the fastest growing fashion categories, and it makes up, according to the UN environmental program, it makes up about 60% of the material made in clothing, which is a staggering amount.
I was very, very surprised by that figure because, I mean, we know about clothing. We know that a very large amount of the stuff that's sold contains cotton or a similar kind of natural fiber. But actually, when you drill down into it, because a lot of the, particularly hoodies and thicker garments, they are blends, aren't they? Yeah. They might be 80% cotton, but they're also 20% polyester or something similar.
Yeah, so it's making up a really big proportion. I think athleisure is just increasing that proportion.
Yeah.
Because it's in almost every athleisure product, and I guess rightly so to some degree, because it's more. I don't know, like if you're getting sweaty, cotton's going to be heavier. If you're doing sports, polyester and synthetic fabrics are more breathable. They do lend themselves to sports, but I think what people don't realize is that polyester is made of PET, which is a plastic.
Yeah.
So you're essentially wearing plastic, and I think most people probably wouldn't be that happy about that.
No, I think as well, if you think plastic, you don't think like thin, wavy, like sheets of fabric, do you? You think of, like, I'm just looking around, plastic bottles, like your phone, your computer, the shrouding on your TV, toys that your kids might have, for example. It's that sort of stuff that you think of as plastic, isn't it? Rather than fabric. Yeah. But the reality is almost all of us are wearing plastic most days.
Like shoes, like, clothes, even the threads that are holding clothes together.
Yeah,
probably a polyester.
And there are very good reasons for it, because it's not just about having things that are sort of figure hooking. Like polyester is good. The reason it's like synthetic fibers in general are used by athletes is because it's stretchy, gives them more freedom to move. You couldn't really be doing like the long jump or the high jump in a pair of jeans or something, could you? It just wouldn't work. But also for more average Joes like me, or perhaps slightly, you're a little bit more athletic than I am. Even just being able to get away with not ironing your clothes. Like if you are wearing a product that is entirely made of cotton, it will require at least a little bit more ironing than something that doesn't, or that isn't just entirely cotton. And that's why a lot of the time they do blend the synthetic fibers in too.
Just wear a t-shirt tight enough that you don't have to stretch those creases out. But no, you're right. And I think that's, it's like these non-iron products, non-iron shirts, they've got the blends to facilitate that. Because I think even ironing, I feel like that's not as much of a thing as it used to be.
No, it's definitely not.
Older generations where they're like ironing underwear.
I remember watching my granddad iron his underwear and stuff. It's like, why are you doing it? No one's going to see it. I think there's very much a trend away from that. But as well, I mean, there's a sustainability element to that, isn't there? Because you're heating up something with electricity, which is using energy.
Well, it's probably reducing the durability as well.
Yeah.
You're heating it up, aren't you?
Yeah.
Somewhat damaging it.
Yeah. And as well, I mean, we're kind of drifting away from sportswear again a little bit here, but at the same time, the stretchiness that comes from polyester and other synthetic fibers. If you're working as a waiter or something like that, and you're wearing a shirt, the ability to wick away the sweat that's coming off you because it's hot in the kitchen, or you're running around carrying lots of heavy plates and stuff like that, and also you get the ability to have a fitted, fashionable product that's also stretchy and gives you freedom to move around and stuff as you work. So there's a lot of benefits to it, but it comes with problems, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So I think the biggest problem, obviously, is the lack of awareness that it's a plastic. I think it probably wouldn't be growing as fast as it is as a category if people were aware that they're essentially wearing plastics, as we're obviously all concerned about the microplastic problem. And I think the fact that that leans into it probably isn't as public knowledge as it should be. I think the other problem is that a lot of these brands are moving over to recycled polyester. So you'll buy t-shirts like this has been made from like 50 plastic bottles and things like that. And again, that's being perceived to be a bit of a silver bullet. And like brands are maybe replacing a cotton t-shirt with a recycled plastic one and classing that as the sustainable option. But the issue is recycled or just general polyester. Both of them emit microplastics. So you're solving the problem of stopping plastic going into landfill by using recycled plastic, yes, but you're not actually solving one of the other massive problems, which is microplastics, because you've got...
Shall we talk about what microplastics are? I think most people
Yes.
are probably quite familiar with that now, but I mean, the clue is in the name, isn't it? It's micro pieces of plastic. And you may have noticed fairly recently, suddenly you stop being able to buy exfoliating like cosmetic products like your shampoos and stuff that contain those little tiny balls that would get into your skin or whatever, because they were actually just pieces of plastic. And what we've noticed is, not just you and I, but as a human species, we've noticed that plastic pollution is actually a serious problem. It kind of fills the oceans, doesn't it? It harms the wildlife that live in and around giant bodies of water. And these microplastics will take centuries to break down.
Yeah, I mean, a paper published in 2011, so before athleisure was as big as it was, in the Journal of Environmental Science and Technology, revealed that microplastics make up as much as 85% of man-made debris on global shorelines, which again, staggering amount, but reflective of how much plastic we're using and how much of that is becoming microplastics as it breaks down.
Yeah, so I think very few of us would really think about that when you buy a piece of athleisure clothing.
No.
And understandably so, because again, we don't associate it with being a plastic. It's a fabric. But then at the same time, we possibly aren't all quite as conscious as we should be of how we actually get plastic, because it's made from oil.
Yes. Yeah. It's, again, I don't think we make that connection in our heads, or at least the general.
No.
The general
I mean,
person.
don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying we should ban all plastics and stop using oil entirely. Like, we're a long way from that. But we shouldn't be making the problem worse than it needs to be.
No, exactly. I think as well, I think a lot of the time in sustainability and in many areas with, like, as humans, we look for that silver bullet, don't we? We want something that
Quick and
is
easy.
either, it's quick and easy, or it kind of ticks all the boxes. And I think recycled plastic and recycled polyester is a step in the right direction. So if you're an athlete and you're wearing recycled polyester versus normal polyester, great. Same for workwear. Fantastic. That's a step in the right direction, because ultimately, in that instance, it's necessary.
I mean, you're taking away some of the waste and reusing it ultimately. So there is definitely recycled synthetic fibers are definitely better than fresh synthetic fibers. But the reality is, I know I hear you talking about it quite a lot. It's still a synthetic fiber and it's still emitting microplastics. So the reality is, the more of it we wear, the more of it these microplastics are becoming a problem. So, I mean, should we talk about very briefly how do these microplastics come out?
Yes, yeah. And I guess where they go after that, which we kind of touched upon with the shorelines. So, I mean, we know that they come out when you're wearing them. So you're moving
Yes.
about these microplastics like they can come off into the air.
I can give a very good example of that. I got a new jumper back in the winter. It was whilst it was cold, and it was a poly blend, and it was like a maroon color. So within the space of say a week of me having this jumper, all of the skirting boards in my house, which are white, were all turned maroon. Not like
That's
completely,
wild.
but just little speckles of
Yeah.
maroon, because there was so much of these fibers coming off it just from me walking around the house. So it's almost definitely I've been breathing them in, and they've been appearing in other places. I probably consumed some through drinking them and eating them and whatever. But it amazed me because of the color of the jumper. It made it really visible. Like if it had been a black or a grey jumper, it would just possibly looked like normal dust. But it was because of the cut, I could just see it everywhere.
Yeah, you've not just been licking a jumper. No, I think, and then the other kind of place that you're losing it, mainly is when washing it. So when it's spinning around in your washing machine or tumble dryer, if you use such a thing, it's going to come off there as well. And with the washing machine, it's literally going straight into the waterways. Because it's
which kind of brings us on to what are the solutions. And obviously, the easiest solution for us in sitting here right now is to say, well, wear natural fibers, wear cotton, wear wool, wear bamboo. But we need to be realistic in the fact that there are times and places where synthetic fibers are necessary. And we talked about the main one, like actual real athletes definitely do need those sorts of things, or those sorts of garments, because they need the flexibility, they need the freedom, and they need the ability to kind of draw away the moisture from their skin to allow them to perform at their absolute best.
Yeah, same for workwear. Again, you want that movement, and arguably something like a high-vis vest, it's just not going to happen in a kind of natural fabric. So it's important from a safety perspective. And then I think, not quite on the sportswear front, but I think it's important to appreciate, although plastic can be very bad, it can also be very good. Like if we think medical devices, like it's been absolutely game changing. So I think it's not always the kind of demon that it's kind of perceived to be. It's just
no
using it appropriately.
Exactly. And I mean, there is very clearly a lot of consumer consciousness of the need to buy more sustainable kind of products in this area, because there was some research we found when we were kind of like just doing a bit of digging for this episode, that showed that sustainable activewear sales increased for men's products by 65% in 2020, and for women's products by 45%, which is significant. But as we've talked about, the recycled element of it, the sustainable element of it, is only kind of half the problem, because those recycled fibers still give off the microplastics. So going through the UK Parliament at the moment, it looks, I just before we started recording, I had a quick look at the bill, because I hadn't kind of seen much about it in the news recently. There is a bill going through Parliament that was there. It was initially introduced into Parliament in 2021, I think. Yeah. It's called the Microplastic Filters Washing Machines Bill. It was introduced by Alberto Costa, a Conservative MP for South Leicestershire. It's got stalled in the second reading, so it doesn't look like much has happened since. But essentially, if this bill were to make it into law, what will happen is all new washing machines will be required to have a filter added to them, similar to the filters that are already on them. But this filter will be required to catch the microplastics that come out of your synthetic fiber products. You can buy them already. They just sit in between the exit pipe and the plumbing of your house. But obviously, it's entirely voluntary. It costs money to buy. It takes time to set up. So there are very few people that are actually doing it. But that could be a bigger step in the solution towards this in the future, I think.
Yeah, like going back to the washing machines, you can also get, like, there are cheaper options like bags that you can put your clothes in and all sorts like that. That again are kind of in part a solution of stopping it going into the waterways. Arguably, you are then going to have to dispose of those fibers, so it doesn't completely fix the problem because they're still going to be going somewhere.
Yes.
Just not necessarily directly into our water supply. So it swings and roundabouts, and I think the ultimate solution is kind of going back to what we were saying before. It's just buying it when it's essential, and then trying to maybe use more natural fabrics where you can. So if you're a normal gym goer, just wear a cotton t-shirt. Like, you're probably still going to hit the same PBs. You're probably not going to have any kind of negligible impact on your performance.
Try bamboo as well. It's not a direct comparison, but it has some more of the same properties as sort of polyester.
Yeah, and there's other like kind of like bamboo. There's other viscose and different natural fibers coming out now that are addressing the kind of sustainable sportswear market, with brands using things that are a little bit outside of the norm, I guess. A lot of fabrics that you wouldn't even think of using, or you wouldn't think would become a fabric. I know I think it was like handbags made from it was like pineapple skin, like, or something. It was something like that. But there's a lot of like materials being used in very different ways that you wouldn't expect. So I think there's a lot of scope for things like that.
Definitely, and that's where our sponsor comes in, because AM Custom Clothing has quite a lot of range of all different types of sustainable clothing, don't they? Including bamboo and viscose products, as well as the recycled polyester and stuff like that.
Exactly. So something for whatever you need, really.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much covers it. I think we can probably wrap it up there. So thank you again for listening to the Sustainability Scope, and we will catch you next time.